Next up, I've got the Dragons. I think the Dragons were pretty good on Saturday night. It was a good game to watch. Well done to Vossi and Brandy on a brilliant call. The two best commentators in the game for me. They just have the ability to make a dull game exciting, but I think this game would have been exciting without. Sadly, the Tigers are looking down the barrel at 0-4. I did say this to my dad. I think round one gave Tigers fans a false sense of security.
It's a miracle! Oh, yeah! Balotelli!
Hello and welcome back to the On The Ball podcast. This is episode 115 of the show, and we are back here to talk about NRL. And I have to quickly apologise because I did promise last week that I'd get a guest on for the NRL episode. I got one for the AFL episode, but this week I'm just going to be doing the NRL by myself once again. I'll honestly try and start to organise my dad and my brother and getting them on in rotation, but at the moment with cricket season winding up, it's been a bit busy. But that should start to happen a bit more regularly so we can hear their insights. I didn't watch as much rugby league this week as I did in round one. I watched the Thursday game, the Friday games, the Saturday night game, and then the other games I just had to watch on replay and some of the highlights. So there's some of the games I have more just read off the stat sheet and the highlights, and then there's others where I'm going off the 80 minutes that I saw on my TV. So we'll be doing the same structure again, starting with the winners and losers. So first of all, my winners are the Parramatta Eels. They were in my losers section last week, I believe, after only just narrowly beating the Broncos, but pretty impressive bounce back victory for them to beat the Storm at Bankwest. The Eels at Bankwest is actually becoming one of the, I'm trying to think, are there any other... I guess Melbourne at Amy Park. I'm thinking of the fortresses in NRL at the moment. Canberra is pretty good. But yeah, Parramatta at Bankwest is right up there. It's obviously a few teams' home grounds. We saw the Bulldogs have a home game there. I think the Tigers have a couple there. Not sure who else plays out of there. But it's definitely the Eels' home ground. They definitely use it best. And they beat the Storm, which was pretty impressive. My minor premiership prediction, the Storm looked so good in round one, and they didn't even play bad this week, but the Eels just were better in the testing conditions that most games saw on the weekend after torrential rain in Sydney. We've seen some flooding and stuff, so I hope everyone's all good up in New South Wales. But the Eels completed at 88%, which is very impressive in the wet weather, and that was pretty much the main difference between the teams. I was looking at the stat sheet, and it was almost even in every single field, and then I think Melbourne completed in the low 70s, and the Eels completed at 88%. So fair play to the whole Eels side, really, for having good discipline in attack, holding onto the ball, not doing silly play the balls and stuff like that. I think Moses and Brown and Marnie led the team around pretty well. I think Moses and Brown kicked very well, and that was a big reason why they won the game. They had less possession, but they probably had better field position when they did have the ball due to Moses and Brown's kicking game. I think some people to mention, I think Regan Campbell-Gillard had a really good game, 170 metres from 17 runs, including 60 post-contact. 4 tackle breaks as well. He was back to his best. He was a bit more quiet in round one, but he looked like his 2020 self. And then Murata Niokore, he played in the centres, which was a bit of a surprise, but he was probably among the Eels' best, I would have said. 129 metres from 13 runs, including 41 post-contact, 6 tackle breaks, and he made some really big tackles. I can remember a couple on Olam where he just crunched the bloke. And yeah, I don't think he's played centre before. If he has, he's only played there on a few occasions. So I thought that was a very impressive performance from Niokore. Their centre depth was being tested, but he seems like he can step up and do the job if they ever need a centre. And then, yeah, I guess you got to talk about that final try. 4 minutes to go. Moses puts up a bit of a crossfield bomb, and Sevo just perfectly timed it. So well done to both those guys. I'm not a big fan of Micah Sevo, but I think he had a pretty good game. He had about 7 tackle breaks, and he just timed that run to perfection and obviously just took the catch. So that was a pretty impressive try. Looking forward, the Eels have the Sharks, the Tigers, the Dragons. So that 3 very winnable games there. Then they've got Canberra in Canberra, which is a toughie. And then they've got the Broncos and Bulldogs. So they could easily be 8-0, really. Apart from that Raiders game, they probably should win the other 5 matches there. And all of a sudden, they're heading into the Origin period on top of the ladder. And from that position, it's pretty hard to not make the top 4. So looks like by virtue of, if they're just able to put away those teams, they should. They look like they could be another top 4 appearance for Parramatta. So big win for them, and well done Parramatta Eels. Next up, I've got the Dragons. I think the Dragons were pretty good on Saturday night. It was a good game to watch. Well done to Vossi and Brandy on a brilliant call. The 2 best commentators in the game for me. They just have the ability to make a dull game exciting, but I think this game would have been exciting without them anyway, but they made it all that much better. The Dragons made 6 line breaks, which was pretty impressive, versus the Cowboys 1, and the Dragons only made 1 line break in round 1, so this was a big improvement for them, a lot more creative. Yes, the Cowboys' defense isn't great, but nor is the Sharks, so that's something they've obviously focused on, being a little bit more creative in attack. I thought Jack Bird was good. He had a pretty poor week 1, but he had a couple errors, but Jack Bird is always going to do that for you. But he had 144 metres, including 43 post-contact, 3 offload, 4 tackles. So if he can do that week in, week out, he can become one of the best centres again, like he used to be at his damaging best. Andrew McCulloch was pretty good, 43 tackles up the middle of the pitch at 97.7% efficiency. Ben Hunt probably had one of his best games in the last couple seasons. 2 try assists as well as a try. He was just very, he wasn't risky, but he was just playing very with a lot of courage, and he just seemed just to be on a bit of a tear really at halfback. Normally he's one of those just reliable guys. He's not going to do much. You rarely notice him really because he doesn't produce much and he doesn't make many errors. He just doesn't have much impact on the game, but he really took the game by the scruff of the neck on Saturday night. I also thought Trent Merrin was pretty good. So that takes the Dragons to 1-1 after their loss to the Sharkies in round 1. They have the Sea Eagles this week. So if they can turn around and win that one, they're 2-1. And some of the teams down the bottom are struggling. You've got 5, I believe there's 5 teams who haven't won a game yet. So pretty exciting times for the Dragons fans, I guess. If they can just, win games against teams that are going to be in that bottom 4 scrap like the Cowboys, like they did on Saturday, all of a sudden they could be finishing, 10th, 11th, 12th, which I think Dragons fans would probably take this year. I don't think they can be expecting to be in the top 8 anytime soon. Well, not anytime soon, but probably just not this year after what they did last year. So I think that was all in all a pretty good win for the Dragons, especially away from home. You would expect the Cowboys to have one of the bigger home ground advantages, playing in a completely different climate than most other teams. So, they did well to go up there and win it. Next up, the other winners. I'm not going to go into depth on these guys, but Panthers, Rabbitohs, and the Roosters. They all dispatched of low-level teams. Panthers put away the Dogs, Rabbitohs put away Manly, and the Roosters easily destroyed my Tigers. And in trying conditions, it's pretty good. When it's wet, that's often where an upset can come because it brings the teams a lot closer together. As we saw with the Eels beating the Storm, it often can, if you can complete your sets in the wet, you can usually beat any team. You don't have to be as creative because you can, win a game with 16, 14 points. So usually there's a lot more upsets on a wet weekend. But so these teams did very well to see them all off. They all remain right up there for the premiership race. The Panthers are yet to concede a point. I think that has to be pointed out. It's absolutely incredible in 160 minutes of football in the NRL. The Roosters have scored 40 twice, which is equally as impressive. However, all 3 teams will be tested this week, so very excited for these games. We've got the Panthers versus the Storm, and that's a big game. The Storm will obviously want to bounce back from their loss on Thursday night. They don't want to be really going 1-2 in the post-Cam Smith era. And the Rabbitohs versus the Roosters, the traditional rivalry, and this year The Roosters are heavy favourites, but I think it's going to be a very good game. However, just quietly, normally I'm going to do a bit more in-depth analysis because I watch pretty much all 8 games when I don't have cricket on, but at the moment I've got cricket on Saturday and Sunday, so I can't watch the matches as in-depth as I would have liked, so my analysis is a little bit shallow at the moment, but stay tuned down the line as I'll probably tackle some of the bigger issues that these teams are facing. And it is also round 2, so it's hard to read too much into, if a left side concedes a try, it's hard to know if that's going to be a permanent issue or not. Moving into the losers, first up, it's got to be my West Tigers. They were absolutely dreadful against the Roosters. I didn't watch the full match, I watched the mini match on KO, but yeah, it just wasn't great at all. I just wasn't in the mood to watch it. On Sunday night, just got home from losing a cricket match, and yeah, I could just tell from my brother and dad's reaction that it just wasn't gonna cap off my weekend in a good way at all. So the main guy who my brother and dad were outraged at was Joey Leilua. By the sounds of it, he had they actually said he had the worst performance they've ever seen an NRL player have. He had 33 metres from 8 runs. If you get your calculators out, you'll find that is just over 4 meters a run, which is pretty ridiculous. Like, I dead set think I would get more than that. Yes, I might drop the ball at the end of every run, or I might get smashed, but I'm getting more than 4 meters per run, because basically by the time you catch the ball, you've got more than 4 meters to get to the defensive line. So I don't know what's going on there. He also had a below 50% tackle efficiency, meaning more than every second tackle he was attempting to make, he was failing at, which, when someone's getting paid to do that, fail more often than not, questions have got to be asked. Jimmy the Jet missed out, so he could perceivably come back and fill Joey Leilua's spot. I know they were playing on opposite edges in round 1, and Leilua is on a bit of coin, so it would be a tough call for Madge to make, but it's pretty hard not to punish a performance like that by dropping him, because otherwise you're just letting him get away with it, really. So he needs a real kick up the backside. And sadly, the Tigers are looking down the barrel at 0-4. I did say this to my dad. I think round 1 gave Tigers fans a false sense of security. I actually don't think we played well in round 1. I talked about this on last week's episode, but I don't think we played that well at all. I don't think we showed anything in attack, and our defence was okay for about 40 minutes, and then it just was pretty poor from there. So I think this result was coming, and I did put it as my sure bet last week, and unsurprisingly, it got up pretty comfortably. So yeah, it's not positive signs for the Tigers. People were saying they're going to come 9th. People were saying they're going to push into the 8. I had them a lot lower than that. I had them down. Originally, I had them 13th or 14th, but I looked at the signings and I thought maybe 11th or 12th, but the more and more we see this team, the more and more 13th or 14th is looking likely, which is pretty sad, because that means we've gone backwards from where we were last year, despite making a lot of signings. But yeah, at this point, 0-4 is almost inevitable. We've got the Knights and the Eels next, so 2 undefeated teams. The Knights, I think, are beatable, but I just don't think the way the Tigers are playing right now, it's likely, and I think you'll find the Knights actually have a pretty good record against the Tigers recently. I know they destroyed us twice last year. Edrick, he's not playing at the moment, but he carved us up. So they know how to beat us, which is not good. And then, yeah, the Eels, the Easter Monday clash, we don't have a good history in that one either. So, yeah, it's not looking good at the moment for the Tigers. Right, moving on to the Cowboys. I talked about them last week, so I don't want to be too negative on them this week, but it's hard not to be when they put up another absolute stinker. They were in the game for about 65 minutes, so you can't, be too mad at that, but it was against one of the other low-level teams in the competition, in the Dragons. They've had 2 line breaks in 2 weeks, which is pretty horrific considering some of the line breakers they possess. Scotty Drinkwater, Val Holmes, Hamish, Tabuai Fidel, Michael Morgan. So that's very disappointing to see from the Cowboys. They just seem to lack that X factor, especially in the forward pack. Now that Tamalolo's gone, I think Frankie Molo was impressive on the weekend, but guys like Mitch Dunn, Cohen Hess, even Maguire off the bench, and someone like a Jensen, they're serviceable first grade players, but at the moment that's all they are, and they're not looking like they could be anything more than that. And they've really got to lift, because yes, all the money is in the back line for the Cowboys. Yes, that's the people who should be making the breaks and stuff like that, but the back rowers honestly seem to have zero impact in a Cowboys game. I remember a few years ago when you'd have Gavin Cooper on one edge. Yes, it was mainly because of JT, but Gavin Cooper used to have so many touches of the ball, you could never miss him, and he'd always have, a try or so. But the Cowboys back rowers at the moment are pretty bad, and not much more can be said about the centre three quarters either. Masters has been a shocking purchase. He's been pretty crap. Hammer, yes, he's only young, so I don't want to be too harsh on him, but he's not shown too much in his first 2 games at centre, offensively anyway. But more, they've been completing at 68%. So you can maybe forgive a team like a Rabbitohs for completing that low, because, they're such a high quality team. When they do complete a set, it's going to be dangerous. When a team is struggling to create things, you almost got to go like the Warriors do and just be really safe, look to complete up and around. And that way you're probably not going to lose yourself games, and you're going to give the other team the opportunity to beat you, but that's better than losing it yourself. They've had the most errors over the 2 weeks of the competition, which is, once again, not on for a team that's struggling creatively. And yeah, just all in all, it hurts that they lost a winnable game to the Dragons. Like the Tigers, yes, they've been poor, but you wouldn't have expected them to beat the Raiders or Roosters. So in that sense, it's not the end of the world, because if they're right to go for the games that are perceivably winnable, you'd rather that than being crap against the bad teams and then putting up a fight against the good teams, because that way you're coming away with 0 competition points. So that's frustrating that it was a winnable game against the Dragons. Next up, in the next month, they've got the Titans, which I think, yes, the Titans were good on the weekend, but I think that's winnable. Then they've got the Sharks, the Tigers, and the Bulldogs. So I think that's 4 winnable games there. If they're coming away winless after 6 rounds, after having the schedule they've had, I think it's really worrying signs. I think some of their big players have got to have a serious look at themselves if they're going 0-6 there. So they've really got to get at least 1, if not 2 wins out of those next 4, I think. Todd Payton is safe because he's only just joined the club, but yeah, it's a worrying start to his career in the coaching ranks. Just feel bad for Cowboys fans, because after JT retired, it's basically gone downhill at a rapid rate of knots. Other teams that are in the losers, the Broncos remain undefeated, but I don't think they've been as woeful as teams like the Tigers and the Cowboys. It was a bit disappointing that they got shredded by their old boy David Fifita. You'd think they would have a game plan against him, but that didn't happen. However, they got the Bulldogs this week, who were held pointless against Panthers, so that's a big game for them. 2 winless sides looking to get on the board, so that's going to be a big 4-pointer either way. Probably going to have like wooden spoon implications potentially. And then the Seagulls, they've looked really bad. They lost, I think, by 16 points to the Rabbitohs. Yes, it was in wet conditions. Yes, they had an injury in the first 5 minutes, so you got to feel for them on that end. But they have the Dragons this week, which I think is a winnable game for them. So if they're going to do anything at all this year, people were predicting them to make the 8. They've got to start making moves, especially in these winnable games. All right, my predicted top 8. Once again, I'll be saying if I've made any changes. I've tried to stick true to it because I don't want to be tinkering week in, week out. So I am keeping my top 3 of the Storm, Rabbitohs, Roosters. I was tempted to lift the Roosters to the minor premiership, but I just thought maybe Origin period they might still struggle for a few weeks there. I've put the Panthers above the Raiders. I think the Panthers have showed they're basically just picked up where they've left off last year. And the Raiders similar. Raiders really struggled throughout the course of last year. I think people forgot that because they were so good in the final series. And it looks like they've kind of started this season in a similar fashion. I don't think they were that good against the Tigers. And they won a scrappy game, albeit in poor conditions, against the Sharks on Sunday night. So I've dropped them down to 5th. I've actually lifted the Eels above the Knights because, yes, the Knights beat the Warriors, but it wasn't that convincing, and the Eels won a good match against the Storm, and just with some of their upcoming fixtures, I just can't see a team who's probably going to get off to like a 7-1, 6-2 start coming 7th. So I've got them there, and then I've still got the Titans in 8th. I think they held their spot with that win. Alright, plays of the week. This was a bit tougher because I didn't watch all the games and you can't really tell off highlights. So I was going a bit more statistical. Backs of the week, shout outs to Ben Hunt. I think he had a very good game for the Dragons. Probably his best game for the club in my opinion. But I'm giving it to Luke Keary. I think he was incredible against the Tigers. 3 try assists, 1 line break assist, 2 line breaks, 139 running metres, and he also tackled in a 95.5% efficiency, which is pretty good for a half. I just think Luke Keary was back to his best on Sunday. I'm laughing because I've got him in my NRL fantasy team, so he's pumping out big scores for me. But as a Tigers fan, it was hard to see. He was just running through Luke Brooks all day, well, trying to anyway, and he was pretty successful in it. That try assist to Brett Morris was pretty special, that flick out the back. Forwards of the week, Tavita Pangai is my number 2. Normally I'm going to do a 3-2-1 for these, but I've just done 2 today. Tavita Pangai I thought was really good. Feels like it's weird recording these episodes and trying to remember back to Thursday and Friday's game because they honestly feel like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, Pangai was very good. 187 running meters, including 73 post contact, 6 tackle busts, 3 offloads. I remember saying to Dad on the couch, this is the issue with Pangai. He has these games once every 6 weeks and you just go, this guy's an absolute star. And then he'll go missing for a few weeks. So going to be interested to see if he can be a little bit more consistent this year, but at his best, he's one of the best middle forwards in the competition. And then I'm going to have to put his old teammate, David Fifita, in at first. I think he was the difference between the teams. In the general run of play, he didn't have too much impact out on that left edge, but he was just, those 2 tries, yes, they were good build-up play, I guess, and they've probably set it up to isolate Milford and Tessie New with Fifita, but it was basically him just running through them. So 2 tries to him, 136 metres from 12 runs, including 40 post-contact. Just like to point out, he's almost averaged more post-contact metres per run than Joey did general metres. Just want to point that one out. Joey Leilua, that is. 2 line breaks and 8 tackle busts. So, yeah, dominant performance from David Fifita. Showed his worth pretty much every penny that the Titans paid in the off-season. And that's probably a game the Titans would have lost in previous years, but just now with the talent they've got on their roster, they overcame the big brother in the Broncos. Rookie of the week, I'm going Sebastian Kris. I don't think he's too young, but he is still a rookie because he's only played a couple games. Filling in for Jared Croker at that left centre position. He scored a try, which we thought he scored in round 1, but was disallowed. He had 115 metres from 11 runs. 43 post-contact, 1 line break, and 5 tackle busts. He looks like he's a bit of a handful, so I've given it to him. Even though Dane Laurie did get a controversial Dally M point against the Raiders, I'll go with Kris this week. Moving on to my week 3 predictions. Sure bet of the week. I can't lie, this week's actually a very tough week for tipping. There's some really close games and there's going to be some nail-biters, both with teams that haven't had a good start and teams that have had a good start. My sure bet of the week, I'm going to go with the last game of the round, Titans up at North Queensland. Just the way the Cowboys have been playing in the past, I am scared to tip against the Cowboys as a sure bet because on paper they still do have some good players, but I just don't think any of the other matches are as sure as this one, if I'm going to be honest. The other contenders, Raiders to beat the Warriors, I guess that's pretty likely, especially in Canberra, but the Warriors produced some upsets last year. And then apart from that, the Eels to beat the Sharks, yes, it's likely, but the Eels are a bit unpredictable. So I'm going to go with the Titans to beat the Cowboys. Yes, it's in North Queensland, but I just think the Titans will eventually, I think the Titans don't actually have to play their best to win games anymore. I think they've hit that level where they've got enough skill on paper. They can have a 7 out of 10 performance and win a game like they did on Friday against the Broncos. And the way that the Cowboys have been playing right now, they're probably going to give that to them if they keep their completion rate and errors up. So they're paying $1.45 to beat the Cowboys. So that's going to be my sure bet of the week. Upset of the week, I'm going I've got 3 options here, and I'm actually unsure who to pick, so I might need some help from you guys. Let me know who you think is going to win in the comments or Instagram DM me. I'm looking at Manly to beat the Dragons. They're paying $2. The Rabbitohs to beat the Roosters. They're paying $2.35. And the Bulldogs to beat the Broncos. They're paying $2.15. I'm probably going to rule out the Rabbitohs to beat the Roosters just because I don't really want to tip against a team that's put up 2 40-point performances in a row. However, I do think the Rabbitohs could definitely win that. I think they're valued at $2.35. Manly to beat the Dragons. That one's going on an absolute whim, but I just think that's the kind of thing Manly would do. I don't think they're a weak team. I think they're pretty gritty, and they're going to be in most games that they play, but right at the moment, if you looked at the weekend, you'd think surely the Dragons win, but they were against different opposition. One was against a premiership contender, one was against a wooden spoon contender. And then the Bulldogs to beat the Broncos. I think I didn't watch Saturday's game, and yes, they looked like they got dominated pretty convincingly by the Panthers, but it was in testing conditions, very wet at Bank West. I think in round 1 they were actually pretty good against the Knights, so I think they could be a solid chance to beat the Broncos. However, the Broncos have showed signs, and it is in Brisbane. So I'm probably going to lock in Manly to beat the Dragons, but I'm not too confident about it. And I looked up the Manly record against the Dragons, and they've won like 1 of the last 7. So, yeah, look, it's a tough one. I think they're the 3 obvious candidates for an upset. But yeah, I'm going to go Manly to beat the Dragons, paying $2. Just not much based on it. I just think Manly are a better team than what they've been putting up recently, and I think in any week it could click. I'm not sure. The teams haven't been announced when I'm recording this, so I'm not sure what's happening with Turbo. Dylan Walker's pretty crap at fullback, if I'm going to be brutally honest. So I hope that maybe gets switched up, maybe try someone else there. But yeah, the Dragons, yes, they looked good on the weekend, but the way they've been playing the last 2 or 3 seasons, they never really put 2 good performances together. So I'm going to take Manly in that one. Betting lines I like. The Titans at -6.5. I mentioned that I think they're a sure bet to beat the Cowboys, and that's a pretty small margin, 6 points. So I think they could easily beat them by more than 6. That's only a converted try. So I like that one. And then Manly at +1.5, as I just mentioned, I think they're going to win. Well, I don't know if I think they're going to win, but I think they're probably the most likely out of the underdogs. So give them a field goal margin, and yeah, I like them for that one. Yeah, it's a very tough tipping week though this week. I've had a pretty good start to the year tipping. I think I've got back-to-back 7s, but this week's definitely going to sort the tipsters out. You've got the Panthers versus the Storm, which is an absolute flip of a coin. Dragons Manly, as I mentioned, that's tough. Rabbitohs Roosters, that's tough. Raiders Warriors, the Raiders should win that, but you never know with the Warriors. Broncos Bulldogs, that's tough. Eels Sharks, Eels should win that. Knights Tigers, Knights should win that, and then the Titans should be the Cowboys. But there's some tough ones that could go either way there, so I'm very excited to watch it. Not sure how much I'll watch because I once again will likely have 2 days of cricket this weekend, but yeah. So stay with me because in future weeks I'm definitely going to get a lot more analytical, and when I get my guests on, especially Locke, I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about tactical changes and choices from the teams. But at the moment, it's a little bit tough to read into that stuff after 2 rounds. But yeah, really enjoying the start of the NRL season. Glad to have it back. Really enjoying the podcast. Later this week, we have an F1 podcast going up to preview that season, and then yeah, just weekly AFL and NRL review and preview. So tune into that. Thanks for listening if you've gotten this far. Thanks for watching if you've got this far. Feel free to get around the episode and get around the podcast in general. And yeah, we appreciate your support, and we'll catch you next time.